Alrighty, our Photon servers are being deployed. Next up, we need to write a build configuration for deploying our website. So fortunately, we already have pretty much the entire concept of building the website encoded into this build script. So if you scroll down here to our deploy website, we see that we package the website into a zip file, and then we execute msdeploy just right here. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. We've already gone through all this. So now all we need to do is write a build configuration that has these parameters set: our web deploy computer, our web deploy user, and our web deploy password. Since those are really the only additional parameters that this build script requires. All the other parameters, such as the environment and the build number and all that fun stuff, that's already been set up. So now we just need those three parameters, and we will have a site built. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's jump back into TeamCity. So no, I'm on TeamCity on my virtual machine. I'm going to go to administration, and then so here you see your administration. I'm going to click on 3dbuzz MMO, the project, not one of these other configurations. And then I'm going to come down here to this big create build configuration button. And I'm going to give the name, I'm going to call it deploy website, because that's exactly what it is going to do. It is going to deploy the website. Then I'm going to hit create. So now it's going to ask me to attach an existing VCS route or create a new one. We're going to attach an existing. I'm just going to select MMO Bitbucket and say attach. When I hit attach, it's going to scan my VCS route for files that it supports, and in this case it finds two files, our build.proj and our slin. I'm going to say use the build.proj, and I have a build step. Again, this really couldn't be easier. So now that I have the build step, I'm going to click into it, and I'm going to change some of the parameters. First of all, the MS Build version that I want to use is 4.5. And then second of all, the target I want to use is going to be deploy website. And there you have it. That's our website task. Now all we need to do now is set our parameters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the parameters on our project so that they're inherited into our configuration. By setting the parameters on my project, it just makes it a lot cleaner, because now all my parameters are in one place as opposed to being spread out through each one of my configurations. The good thing, however, is I can override them on a per configuration basis if I wanted to. So now let's go into the project route. So I clicked on 3dbuzz MMO. Be sure to click on that, because you'll notice we have parameters on the left-hand side here, but we're in the configuration, as you can see up here. View suggested settings. That's fine. Just go away. So let's go ahead and make sure we click on the project and go down to parameters, and let's fill in our parameters. So our parameters are just going to be environment variables that we're going to set that correspond to the parameters we want to pass in here: the web deploy computer, the web deploy user, and the web deploy password. So I'm going to move Visual Studio off to the side here so I can reference those parameters, and then I'm going to set them up inside of TeamCity. So I'm going to come up here to add new parameter, and I'm going to give it a name of env.webDeployComputer. That is so annoying. Okay, quick heads up. When you do env. It'll set the kind to environment variable, which is what we want to set. But if you tab, it'll switch over back to configuration parameter, which will remove the env. So let's make sure that we don't tab when we select env. Anyway, the web deployment computer is going to be 192.168.2.138. That's my static IP for this virtual machine. Then I'm going to hit save. So we now have our web deploy computer for our website. Now let's add a new parameter, and I'm going to call it env.webDeployUser. I'm going to set it to deploy. That's the user that MS-Build is going to use, or MS-Deploy is going to use, when performing the actual deployment. So I'm going to hit save. All right, let's go ahead and add a new parameter. And the last parameter we're going to add is env.webDeployPassword. And I believe the password I used for deploy was test. I'm pretty sure it's test. And I'll just go ahead and save that out. Okay, so now our project has all of the parameters set that it needs to have set in order to perform the website deployment. And that's really all we need to do to get this build configuration going. Now, I doubt the build configuration is going to work on the first try. They typically will not, but this should be everything we need, and we'll go ahead and figure out all the individual problems as they arise. So now let's jump back over to the Projects tab, and we see we have 3D Buzz MMO, and let's hit Run on Deploy Website. You'll notice I am a bit impatient here by just hitting refresh. Alternatively, oh, we already get a compilation error, so that's fine. Let's go ahead and open up the build log and see what we forgot. It says the target package does not exist in the project. What is it doing here? Let's look at the actual command msbuild here. So it builds out the solution, good. Then it deploys the website. Then it says build target package. The target package does not exist in the project. So what that's going to be caused by is probably more of these weird dependencies that we need to add for Visual Studio. Remember how we had to copy in some MS build targets and a DLL to support even building with MS deploy? Well, it seems that that package target has not been included yet. So let's go ahead and figure out what files we need to copy over from Visual Studio to make the package task work properly. So I think that the root cause here is that we are indeed missing one of those additional dependencies, one of those targets files, and a corresponding DLL. I highly doubt that if you installed Visual Studio on your deployment server that you are going to run into this issue. That's probably going to be very unlikely because these things would have already been moved over. But let's go ahead and move these files over in the case that you don't have Visual Studio on your build server, which in this case I don't. So the files that I'm going to want to look at are going to be located under my C drive, program files x86, MS build, wherever you are, there you are, MS build, Microsoft, Visual Studio, version 11. If you're using Visual Studio 2013, you might be wanting to copy over... Actually, no, it seems that the version 12 does not have these targets. So let's just copy over version 11. And then you see we have web and we have web applications. So we've already brought over web applications, but we haven't yet brought over web. And you'll notice that web contains things like target or deploy, and then it contains the web publishing targets, the web publishing tasks, all that fun stuff. You know, that seems suspiciously like something that we would need to have copied over. So I'm just going to take a shot in the dark and copy this folder over into the corresponding directory structure on my build machine. So opening up my virtual machine, I'm going to come over here to my computer, my C drive, program files x86, since it is a 32-bit operating or 64-bit operating system, MS build, Microsoft, Visual Studio, version 11, and I'm going to stay in this folder. I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to click and drag web into web applications, and then I'm going to dismiss this UAC prompt, and now you see that we now have this web folder. So let's come back into TeamCity and see what happens when we rebuild this. So I'm going to say run. I'm going to go ahead and open up the tail of the build log for this and see what we get. So right now it's building the solution and it fails. Let's open up the tree view to track down why it is. Looks like it got a little bit further, so that's cool. Now what it's saying is import parameters file, C web Microsoft Publishing targets, error. The import parameters file task failed unexpectedly, file not found. Could not find file or assembly Microsoft Web Transforms. System cannot find the file specified. File name, Microsoft Web Transforms. I wonder if because I pulled this out of x86, I wonder if I should have pulled this out of my normal program files. Let me see if there's a corresponding file. I don't think there is, but I'm just going to check to see if there's no, there's not. So I did pull the right DLLs, but it can't seem to find my Microsoft Web XML Transform assembly. So let's go ahead and see if we can get this installed on our deployment. Okay, so after a little bit of digging, it seems that there's this assembly, this XML Transform assembly, or Microsoft Web XML Transform assembly, that seems to have found its way into my global assembly cache on my local machine, but is normally actually supposed to be located in this folder right here. And because it's not located in this folder on my computer, unfortunately I won't be able to copy it over to my virtual machine. So now the question is where does this assembly come from? Because fortunately this assembly comes from a special package that you can download from Microsoft, and it will install the proper DLL into this folder, and then I'll be able to copy the DLL from this folder to my development machine. Again, this whole exercise is about avoiding having to install Visual Studio on the continuous integration server, which in theory should be possible. In practice, we do have to work around it a little bit, but it is ultimately, I believe, a better solution. So let's go ahead and do that. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open up Google and search for Web Tools for Visual Studio 2012. Okay, so the thing you want to download is not the Web Essentials 2012. It's going to be the ASP.NET and Web Tools 2013.1 for Visual Studio 2012. This is the package you're going to want to install, assuming that you're using Visual Studio 2012. Let's go ahead and download it. I'm going to download the ASP.NET Web Tools setup. It should download fairly quickly. It's only 38 megs. It's funny that I can, now say it's only 38 megs. It's going to be done in a couple seconds. 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. But as you see, it's just about finishing up. So we're going to go ahead and install this guy. And by installing this guy, we should get that assembly put in the right folder. So it's already installed, but what I've been reading online is they say that if I do a repair, so I'm going to click on repair and accept the UAC prompt. If I do a repair, it will place the assembly into the correct location. So we're going to sit here and we're going to wait. It's installing the uninstall finalizer. I don't know what an uninstall finalizer does. Is it a bit to the uninstaller that uninstalls the uninstaller? I don't know. Okay, I might go ahead and just pause the video while this progress bar slowly inches from the left to the right. I'll see you guys in a moment. All right, and we're back. Setup successful. So now it's the moment of truth. Do we have a new assembly in this folder? We do not have a new assembly in this folder. Is there an assembly anywhere in this folder? Or am I just going to have to pull this assembly straight out of my GAC? I have to pull this assembly straight out of my GAC because I can't seem to find it anywhere. Okay, let's open up my GAC. Your GAC is going to be located under your C drive, Windows, and C Windows Assembly. This will be your GAC, your global assembly cache. And I'm going to locate Microsoft dot web. Where are you? Please be here. Come on. It's not here either. Web XML transform. Web XML transform. So I'm curious as to how exactly this assembly is being loaded on my local computer, but doesn't seem to manage to be loaded on the remote computer. So I'm going to pause the video for a moment and I'm going to figure this out. Okay, so I'm looking at the actual web publishing.targets file, and I don't see any references to Microsoft XML Web Transform. So that means that it's being loaded by another assembly somewhere. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually go ahead and turn on assembly binding logging. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this registry key and enable it. So I'm going to come back into my virtual machine. I'm going to open up regedit. I don't know if this will solve our problem, but I think that when you run into an issue like this, it's important to know how to turn on assembly binding logging. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for the key in our registry, HKey local machine, and then we're going to open up software, Microsoft, then we're going to locate Fusion. So here's Fusion, and then we're going to add a new key of dword 32-bit, and I'm going to call it enable log, and I'm going to set this key to 1. So now that I have my registry updated, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to try to deploy the website again, and then I'm going to watch the build log very carefully and see exactly what's going on. Okay, let's take a look at this. First of all, I do want to notice how far deploy. Okay, so it's the package task that's breaking. You'll notice that we actually were able to get quite a bit of the package task done. All right, let's take a look at this error more closely and see if it leads us to any solutions. Alrighty. So this did show us some interesting things. It shows us where it's trying to locate the DLL. And so I checked all these locations on my own computer, my host computer, and I still wasn't able to find the XML transform.dll. It was really frustrating. So then I just went to the nuclear option and I searched my entire hard drive for my web XML transform DLL, and I found it. It's actually funny because we already have it in our tools that we downloaded for our project in our NuGet packages. We already have one of these, so we can use that. But this assembly binding redirect is really interesting because it tells us where we could place our new DLL that I just located so that our build server will see it. So I'm going to choose to place it right here. It'll be right beside all those other things that we've already copied over. So this is where I'm going to dump the XML file or the DLL file. Before I do that, I'm going to turn off the logging. So I'm going to delete this key. And then I'm going to bring over our solution on my host. I'm going to show you exactly where you can find this DLL. It is under Source, Packages, Slow Cheetah, Tools, Microsoft Web XML Transform.dll. So let's go ahead and drop it over here, get that going on our virtual machine, jump back into TeamCity and run a new build. We're going to see what happens. Wait 25 years. We still get a compilation error, but hopefully it's a different one. Still can't find it. It's not the right version. Should be the right version. Looking at it right there. I'm looking at it right there. Right-click properties. Details 12311. It's looking for 1400. Oh, this is a cruel joke. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the nuclear option and search for it again and try to find where that different version of that assembly might live. So let's go ahead and I'm going to do this search. I'm going to pause the video while I locate it and we'll try a different version. While that's going on, there is another potential place that we can acquire this Microsoft Web XML Transform.dll. So I'm going to jump into Visual Studio, and what I'm going to do is on my web project, I'm going to right-click References, and I'm going to say Manage NuGet Packages. And then I'm going to search for microsoft.web.xdt. So in theory, this package should include the latest version of that transform DLL so that it'll get loaded properly into our build environment. So I'm just going to hit install, accept the license agreement that I did not read. And that's cool. So we're not using it in our project at all, but the reason why I included it was so that I can come in here into Source, Packages, and find Microsoft Web XDT, open up lib, net4, and we see Microsoft Web XML Transforms.dll. Let's go ahead and look at its properties. And I believe this is going to be, this should be a higher version than what we have on our, yeah, it is a higher version than what we have copied over to our virtual machine. So let's copy this guy over, and let's say move and replace. So now we have this guy in there. Let's jump back into TeamCity, come up here, and hit run. This is fun. Yeah, I'm leaving all this stuff in the video because this stuff happens all the time. Getting these build setups to work, especially when you don't install Visual Studio, is an absolute pain. Wait a sec. It is looking for 1.4.0.0. What did we just stick in here? 2.1.5.4. Wonder if this version number corresponds with the NuGet package that we have. So I'm going to say NuGet package. I'm going to search for this again, and I'm going to open this up in this, and I see there is no, doesn't see there is no version for that. All right. Well, I guess back to the drawing board. Or no, my search just pulled up a version 1.2.0. Is that the version we need? 1.4.0 is the version we need, not 1.2.0. Let's try this anyway. I'm going to copy it over real fast. I'm going to see if it works, and if it works, I'll show you guys where I found it. You ever wondered what a person whose job is DevOps does all day? You are seeing that right now. All right, back to the draw. Alrighty. So what I ended up doing was I went into my programs and features, and I found everything that had anything to do with ASP.NET tools and frameworks and all that fun stuff. Let me show you what you guys what that looks like. Remember, if you're not having this issue, then that's fine, because this issue actually comes about when you install a certain amount of SDKs in a particular order. And what worked for me is I went in and I grabbed everything that looked like this, everything that said something like Microsoft ASP.NET and Web Framework 2012. I had two of those in my program list, and I uninstalled both of them. Then I simply reinstalled the package that we installed earlier, the one that I got from Microsoft, the ASP.NET Web and Tools 2012. So once I reinstalled that, what happened was I was able to install my, or grab a copy of my XML transform file. So in my web folder, so my web folder disappeared when I uninstalled all of those ASP.NET web framework and tools. And then when it reappeared, when I did the reinstallation, my Microsoft Web XML Transform.dll appeared. So let's go ahead and see if this DLL will allow us to build our website. So I'm going to copy this over. Now I have my new version of Web XML Transform. I'm going to go back into TeamCity, and I'm going to hit Run. And then we're going to see what happens. Super exciting stuff. All right, we're resolving our project references. That's what we're doing right now, apparently. We're collecting files. It hasn't failed yet. So I think it's actually collecting the files for real this time. Yep. We see all of our files being added. Now we are starting our web deployment task. And we're adding the file to the package. So we're taking all those files that were just built and turning it into a package. We're adding some parameters. We're finally executing our web deploy. We are connecting to the server. We are updating files. Seriously, guys, you don't need to pay to go see movies. You can get the same excitement by opening up a build task for publishing an ASP.NET MVC site. You see the files are updated and build finished. We now have a successful build. So now if I go to Buzz MMO2 or MMO2.3dbuzz.dev, or what did I call that? I called it MMO.3dbuzz.sta. That's the where I'm going to be viewing that. While that works, I'm going to go in. I'm not going to worry about reopening Visual Studio up right now, but I will jump in and go into my solution. So while that's loading, it's spooling up the site in IIS. I'm going to open up my website, and I'm going to make a simple change to one of my views, and then I'm going to commit that change, and I'm going to run the publish task again to ensure that our changes do indeed reflect on our production environment. So I'm going to go into Views, Home, Index.shhtml. I'm going to open that up here in Sublime, and I'm going to say something like Buzz MMO. Hello, world. Explanation point. Then I'm going to close out of that file now that I made that modification. I'm going to open up source tree. And we see that we've made some changes. I will actually, nah, I won't. I'll just go ahead and commit this. Doesn't matter. Then I'm going to commit, and I'm going to say made change to site. Say commit. Then I'm going to push it. And now it's on Bitbucket. By now, our site has loaded. As you see right here, IIS has finally got its act together and decided to load our site up. It's running a little bit slow because right now my disk I/O is being contested quite a bit, so my virtual machine is getting pegged pretty hard as it tries to access the hard drive. So you'll notice that it's acting a bit slow, but that's not the application itself acting slow, that's just my virtual machine. I'm going to change the username to admin, password to test. Or sorry, password is admin. Okay, so I log in, and we don't see the change yet because we haven't done the deployment. Let's go back into TeamCity and hit run. And let's see how fast this runs. Note there is a nice little progress bar now. That progress bar is an estimate for how long the build task is going to take, and it depends on the history of how long the build task took to run. But I do believe it should run a little bit quicker this time. Simply because we have intermediate files, and also I feel like the last run of this was going a little bit slower than it should have. That could have been contributed by my virtual machine running into some locking. But we see that it's deployed. Let's come back to the site and hit refresh. Now, when we deploy, it is going to cause a server restart, or an application pool restart. So the site will have to restart itself, meaning the first request after a deployment will always take a second. That's just true for any ASP.NET application, be it ASP.NET MVC or ASP.NET Web Forms, just how it works. And look at that. We were able to take a change locally, go into TeamCity, hit a button, and see it appear on the actual site. So now we have a full continuous integration solution for our Photon servers and our website. So I think that's really cool. It'll save us a bunch of time in the future, and it also removes errors, because life before CI is a very difficult time where you have to manage synchronizing files over FTP, and you often make errors. With this, everything is automated, everything is well defined, and sure, there's going to be a couple hiccups now and then. Eventually, sometimes you're going to run into a time where you don't have the proper dependency on the build server, or your configuration is out of date and you have to go in and fix it. But that stuff happens so rarely compared to the amount of time that this saves. Again, just coming over here into TeamCity, hitting a button and seeing it deployed to an IS site, that's pretty big, especially if you guys are ASP.NET developers and don't have a solution like this set up, and you will understand how big this really is. But anyway, guys, I think that pretty much wraps this video up, and I guess we'll see you guys in the next one.